Professor Gopal Guru.
Dear friends, both female and male, I must thank the organizers of this Hyderabad collective for. Is it okay? Can you hear me clearly? Can you hear me clearly? Thank you. So I was saying that I must thank the Hyderabad collective for inviting me along with Sainath to speak to you this evening. I am particularly very happy that after this Mumbai collective, that Hyderabad took an initiative to replicate the collective. And I don't need to define what is collective, everyone knows it. That's why you all come in big numbers in this hall. We have to think collectively to really produce something very, very concrete, creative and collective. And we will find out during this question answer session whether we are really reaching towards the goal of achieving this collective. I would promise, madam, I will just speak for 35 minutes. We'll have a chance to listen to Sainath more. And I have come all the way from Delhi to listen to him. I've been listening to him quite often. For the last 25 years, I'm listening to him. And so it is always a pleasure to listen to him and learn something from him. Now, the topic that I'm supposed to speak has been the topic of my interest, about which I've been speaking in teaching in JNU and in collective. The question that one has to raise is to why this topic has become so important today than ever before. Why we should pay additional extra attention to this question of nationalism and nation. We keep on teaching nation, nationalism in the classroom situation, but I don't think we deal with this topic in classroom situation the way we want to deal with this topic outside the classroom. We are being told by forces that there are different kinds of nationalism and there is one kind of nationalism. But we are not told what is this nationalism. This nation and nationalism comes to us as a slogan, and slogan as empty slogan. There is no content to this slogan, just nationalism. We, as the sensitive, creative thinking being, have to think about the word nation and nationalism. For the simple reason that nation has a very important meaning into our day-to-day life. As Madam was saying, how do I make sense of nationalism? How do I relate myself to nationalism? How do I realize my association with nationalism? And can we really have nationalism something which is beyond our reach? It is a thing which has to be celebrated, worshipped, and simply imagined, not to be realized in the day-to-day life. The question, therefore, is we have to make necessary concrete connection of your living on everyday basis and nation. If you do not do this, you will lose your hold on the very concept of nationalism. Whose nation are we talking about? To whom does the nation belong to? It's a very fundamental question. Since nationalism and nation is being privileged for other debates and discourses and arguments, we have to take this question very, very seriously and make it a very cardinal core principle of our everyday common sense, that we must think about nationalism almost on an everyday basis. And we should ask questions to those people who don't follow nationalism almost on everyday basis. And as I mentioned earlier, the nation has to take our opinion every day. It's a everyday plebiscite, as they say in technical language. So what I am saying by way of introducing this theme to you is to see, take nationalism very seriously. Some years ago, nationalism never enjoyed respectability and seriousness, even in radical thinking. We are all talking about imperialism and nationalism remaining in background. We are talking about nationalism not because somebody is forcing us to talk, but it is very, very urgent social need to talk about nationalism. This is the first point by way of introduction. Now there are 2 points I would like to cover in this talk, and I will confine my talk only to these 2 points. One is nation as an adjective. I'm sure there are a lot of students sitting here. I'm just putting more trace on nation as an adjective. What do I mean by this nation as an adjective? I am simply suggesting that nation has more than one meaning. You cannot define nation in one singular language or vocabulary or terminology. There are several notions of nations depending on who is trying to understand nation. What is the location of that person who is trying to make sense of this nation? Why do we have several meanings of nation? For example, for women, what is the characterization of nation? How does it look like to women? Is it nation with patriarchy, or is it egalitarian nation for them? I am not answering question, I am just leaving question with you. For Dalit, is it a Puraskrut Bharat, egalitarian nation, or a more inclusive nation, or a Bahishkrut Bharat, the ostracized, boycotted India? For Dalit, nation doesn't have only one singular meaning, they have different meaning depending on where they stand. At the margin they stand. And for the OBC in tribals and denotified tribes, where is the notion for them? They don't even exist within the frame of nation. So what I am suggesting, there are different meanings people can draw from nation. So do not reduce us to one singular solitary meaning of nation. That's the point. And that's how we have incredible India, Atulya Bharat. We have modern India. We are Mother India. We are developing India. We are developed India. We are India with youth. We are India with skillful youth, and so on and so forth. So the point is, there are multiple meanings, multiple characters that are assigned to nation. Therefore, what we are asking, we have to enjoy, not only enjoy, we have to exercise freedom to assign different meanings to the word nation. Let nation exist in its plurality, in its very, very rich, diversified connotations. Are we able to enjoy, exercise this freedom of looking at nation differently depending on where we stand? Okay, we are also secular nation depending on where we stand. Is it not? We are also democratic nation. So we have to have more than one meaning, not nation only as a slogan. When you are discussing with your family members, in your family, your obsession should be to discuss about these things. How can you not discuss about these things? Your family has to have this obsession of discussing things that torment you, that trouble you. So my plea, a humble submission, is to really bring serious discussion into your dining room. Your family, after all, is not away from all these large questions. You can perhaps translate those questions into your electoral choice. But please bring them into your dining room. If you don't do, delay it, send it out from class, dining room, family, friendship, all those peer groups. Collective is for that, to actually strengthen this space. So, the first plea is to really have different meanings of nation and discuss nation in its different forms, different, if you want to use that word, different incarnations, if you really like that particular terminology. Okay, this is the first plea. Now, nation is an adjective because it carries different meanings to it. It's a very liberal term, but you must really, and I am really requesting Sainath and not others, to really creatively, transformatively accommodate the language of liberalism into your own discourse. I don't think we can have any space, you cannot take a content jump and really avoid being liberal at this point of time. This is a challenge for us. We are not talking, we are talking only about the communist nation sometimes later, sometimes ago. But we are supposed to talk about this at the moment. I go one or two steps backward and see that whether we can really talk about nation as multiple, diverse entity. But entity which has direct connection to my everyday life, live conditions, lived experience. And I'll come back to that point. Now the other point I want to make is nation as proper noun. Adjective, nation as proper noun. Now in earlier case, I am actually the element of self-consciousness is at play in the earlier, the adjective. I am self-aware, I am self-conscious that there are more than one meanings to nation. So there is an element of self-consciousness in the earlier. But nation as proper noun, so much of movement is happening and people are not able to listen to me. Baito bhai jaldi. I'm sorry, I'm being like a arrogant teacher in the classroom. Anyway, sorry for this. So the proper noun will not actually be informed by the element of self-consciousness, but it is self-confident. Okay? The nation as proper noun involves this element of self-confidence. You are so confident about yourself, you do not require any other additional meaning to your nation. So there is some kind of self-confidence, some kind of self-assertion. You need not really think about several meanings of nation, only one singular meaning is sufficient for your purpose. So, nation as proper noun with dominant character. Now what is this proper noun? How do you explain? Now from adjective to noun, you only will zero down on one singular understanding, one dominant understanding of nation. That is, for let me take a progressive, positive understanding. Buddhist India, only one. There is no other India, only Buddhist India. That's it. There is no other India, but just Mother India. Another assertion. Okay. So I am actually building up consensus around one singular term called Mother India or Buddhist India or Developed India or Incredible India. I am just actually focusing singularly on one entity, one option. There are no options. In earlier cases, adjective, there are several options. Now, therefore, here the problem is you have to defend this claim. You have to defend this claim. Now, if I say I am with modern India, that's the only claim, what I am supposed to do? I must take what is modern about nation, what is modern about India. one quick answer is India is not traditional. But I won't take this position because country is an evolving entity. It carries with it some progressive, critical elements of the past, like Buddha. So I am not taking a departure. I am saying that the idea of India is evolving. It is having some connection with the past, but creative, critical past. Now, if I am insisting on one terminology, one notion of nation, one understanding of nation, I must ask further question. How do I defend this? On what grounds do I defend this? I need to have, it's not simply slogan, it is not simply rhetoric. It is something which is deeply rooted into my value system. What are the value system on which my claim is based? If I am saying that my India is modern, then I would say it is modern because bureaucracy is modern. Institutions are modern. They don't practice gender injustice and casteism. In the context of university politics today, you must raise this point. Does our bureaucracy have that very, very pure character of having only modern character and not any pre-modern character like caste? So I have to ask this question whether my institution, bureaucracy is really free from these pre-modern remnants of caste. If that is not free, then can I call my India as modern? Is it not? We should ask this question. Okay. My India is modern because it is also based on some kind of efficiency. I do not delay the fellowships of people. I am so efficient to give them fellowships immediately. Is my India modern? Is it efficient, therefore it is modern? Should we not ask this question to ourselves and sensitize our understanding of India as modern? Is it not? And so, being modern is being efficient. Being modern is also being, so to say, meritorious. You should always appoint people who are meritorious. And that is how you are modern. Meritorious people always exist outside the ideological connection. They do not carry the baggage of ideology. If they are ideologically committed, I am not very sure they are meritorious. These are issues we should be talking to those people who are sitting at the helm of the affairs. Well, I am happy to talk to you in this Hyderabad collective. Why not? After all, we have to offer some direction to these people who don't want to, who do not want to listen, who refuse to learn anything from the public common consciousness and good common sense. So, in what sense India is modern? Okay. I singularly define my India in terms of sovereignty, that I have to protect the boundaries of my nation from outside invention and intervention and transgression. Fine, I am with them. If I am Buddha, or if I am Gandhi, or if I am Kant, I would say, why should we have really borders? Seamless. Anyway, globalization has rendered you seamless anyway. How fake we are in terms of really. And we are actually laundering, money laundering, everything is crossing boundaries every day, and yet we talk about nationalism. Some kind of self-consciousness should be there, no? Is it not? Sainath, you have to speak more on this. I am giving some homework to you. Is it not? So, if LOC, life of control, is your consideration, and I might be with you for some time, but at the same time, how do you deal with the internal fault lines like caste? There are internal fault lines. And should we not ask this question? The LOC is glossing over the internal fault lines. After all, the radical, the anti-untouchability league in Madurai district, has it not been fighting, led by the comrades there in Madurai district, Sainath? Are they not fighting to really remove these physical boundaries and wall of untouchability which is practically existing in the villages in Tamil Nadu? While you are talking about LOC, should we not talk about the LOC inside? But in the masculine nature of nationalism, other questions need to be silenced. They have to be subordinated fundamentally to the major question. Shouldn't talk about the internal fault lines, but we need to talk. If you really want some kind of very decent, benign nation, we need to handle this question on priority. We still have Bahishruth India, Dalit Wada, Cheris and Hulgaris are existing outside the mainstream village. We are still talking about modern India. So the proper noun has to be questioned on grounds that are normative in character. They ask questions of values, equality, justice, freedom, and more importantly, friendship. In Ambedkar's language, Maitri. We need to really create some space for this concept called Maitri. But we feel all the time so suspicious about each other. We are not sure about the next door. And this insecurity, suspicion, anxiety is much more dangerous than the real danger. There is a deep depoliticization of teachers who do not want to take side. I'm just taking on to myself. Insecurity, we are. So in philosophical language, socializing into silence. And therefore, madam, we require freedom on, it is a very, very valuable, I wouldn't say commodity, but need. Very well. So this is one. So if you really want to defend nation as proper noun, you must following the conditions of normativity. You must really guarantee freedom, democracy, justice, equality. But then if you really convert regressively nation as proper noun into simply empty self-assertion, just because you are in majority, you will teach people what is nation, will not be accepted. Is it not? Can we really ask them to sit somewhere? I don't know. I'm very sensitive. Mohan, ask them to sit inside. No space, sorry for this. But anyway, that's how the importance is underlined, underscored. Okay, if you are actually selling nation as hagiography or hagiography? Hagiography. Satish, hagiography? Satish, anyway, hagiography. You have to simply worship nation. But we want nation to be meaningful in our life. For example, if I am zeroing down Mobile India, happening India, Mobile India is very, very good. And Sainath knows how Mobile India is. They are mobilized into committing suicide. Mobilized into committing suicide. Mobile India is your proper noun. You want to follow this in the age of globalization because you want to promote ecotourism. Ecotourism doesn't become a possibility without being mobile and cash economy. Okay? And therefore, you find people moving from one place to another place. I'm not talking about migration. I'm not talking about the distress migration. That's not mobility. Distress migration is not mobility, and Sainath will speak perhaps more about it. But in mobile, you have to relate yourself to nation through mobility. At least you are going to Delhi, you are going to Wagah border, You are going to Firozpur border in the north. You can realize reading what is nation. But in my village, even today, I have not seen my parents, my relatives going even to taluka place. What kind of nation are they really imagining? There is no mobility. Whose nation are we talking about? Whose mobile nation we are talking about? Whom does nation mobilize into? So I think nation that doesn't give equality of enjoying aesthetic sense equally, I don't think we should really, we have to have an alternative conception of nation. So any proper nation as proper noun has to really stand the scrutiny of your value judgment. It has to be evaluated on your value judgment, how much can you really redeem, realize nation into your personal experience. And the personal experience that I have not been able to even visit taluka place. How tragic it is. While others are actually moving outside the country, inside the country, they are having a great time in Switzerland and everywhere. And they are related to nation because they are holding passport with them. A person who is in the village for ages, generations after generation, can he or she relate to nation without passport? And Ambedkar says, waiting for visa. Waiting for visa. What kind of nation are we talking about? What kind of bearing does it have on my day-to-day life is the question that we should ask on everyday basis in your dining hall, friendship circle, peer groups and everywhere. Of course in the classroom and collectives. Okay, so the allegiance, I'll stop here now. 5 minutes, so I'll just take 2 minutes and close the discussion. We can have some discussion if you want. Now, suppose I am having the picture of Prabuddha Bharat, enlightened India of Ambedkar. I should really have this nation as proper known as enlightened India. What are the normative challenges that I have to face, and normative arguments I have to offer? What is the basis of my saying that we really require Prabuddha Bharat or enlightened India, which Ambedkar took from Buddhism? The starting point of this enlightened India is Hyderabad Collective. The enlightened India is not given by God, it has to be created from the collective critical thinking. And Hyderabad Collective is one, and before that Mumbai Collective is another. I hope to have a reputation of this elsewhere in other cities of this country. So allegiance to nation has to be not through compulsion, my friends, but through testified, purified conviction, cultivated conviction, not fabricated conviction. We always fabricate conviction through classroom situations. But we have to cultivate this conviction that, look here, I will lend my support to nation to the extent that the nation also responds to our normative needs. And therefore, I think the question of authority becomes more important. In adjective, it is the moral authority of nation that will really solicit my allegiance. It is not compulsion. Compulsion becomes a possibility only through power. Nation as proper noun always carries power with it. And this is the point I am not dwelling on. It's an important point. How does nation mediate between authority and nation, and authority and power? Maybe where is Narasimha? You should, I'm not Narasimha, his team should organize another collective, and perhaps I will speak more on what is the difference between authority, what is the relationship of authority and power to nation. Thank you very much.